Chapter 38:58. When they entered they did not see Du Fan. Instead Leng Hua walked up and gestured for them to enter. "Please come in. Young Master Leng." Dreamy Feng had seen him before so he bowed. When the South City Lord saw Leng Hua he secretly sized him up and asked, "Young Master, you are?" Leng Hua smiled and said warmly, "I'm the housekeeper of the residence." Hearing this and seeing Dreamy Feng's respectful attitude, the South City Lord did not dare to look down on him. He nodded slightly and followed him inside. After sitting down at a stone table, the South City Lord looked at Leng Hua and said, "Young Master Leng, can you pass on a message for me? I want to see the commander." Leng Hua smiled warmly and said, "That may not be possible. It's not convenient for my master. If there's anything you need you can tell me. I'll pass on your message." The South City Lord was about to say something when he saw Luo Yu and Qi Kong walk over and sit down at the table. Luo Yu had a blade of grass in his mouth and said, "I say, South City Lord, since you're here, just have a few drinks and chat. What trouble do you have to trouble my master? What's more, my master usually orders us to do things. She's not in charge now. If you really have something urgent, just tell us." Seeing this, the South City Lord did not say anything else. He wanted to ask who they were. Were they really not afraid of the Lingxiao celestial sect coming after them after causing such a big commotion? However, they did not look worried. Forget it, he did not mention it. Not long after, Du Fan changed out of his blood-stained robe and walked over. He said to them, "South City Lord Commander Jean, I've already asked the kitchen to prepare a few dishes. Since you're here today, have a few drinks before you go back." When the South City Lord and Dreamy Feng saw him, they naturally walked forward and put a hand on Qi Kang's shoulder. When they sat down beside him their eyes flashed. Perhaps sensing their scrutiny, Du Fan smiled. "Qi Kang is our brother." Hearing this, the two of them couldn't help but be shocked. "What? Is the East City Lord one of your people? Is it strange?" Du Fan took out a bottle of wine from the space and poured them a cup. He smiled at the two of them and said, "Not only is he one of our people, there are also many of our people in the city." Their faces were filled with disbelief. Dreamy Feng knew that there were people in their city, but he didn't expect that even the East City Lord was one of them. Although the South City Lord knew that they were powerful, he did not expect them to be able to infiltrate the Spirit Immortal City in such a short period of time. Just thinking about it shocked him. When Leng Hua saw them chatting, he smiled and left quietly, preparing to return to his master's side. At this moment in the main courtyard, Fengjiu was lazily lying on a soft couch with a book covering his face. He said, "Is everything settled? I don't know what happened from beginning to end. It's just a small matter. You don't have to worry about it. I've already asked them to take care of it." As Xianyuan Mo spoke, he poured himself a cup of tea and took a sip. Seeing that she was covering her face with a book, he removed it from her face and said, "You've already been lying down for a while. Do you want to get up and walk around?" "I don't want to move. I just want to lie down," Fengjiu said lazily, raising his hand to cover his eyes. Chapter 38:59. A pair of hands held his and a gentle voice with a smile entered his ears, soothing the worry in his heart. "Don't worry, it'll be fine," Fengjiu said gently. She looked at him and smiled. "Don't look so worried all the time. Relax, it'll be fine. Besides, there are still some geniuses who will give birth." Xianyuan Mo's replied. He didn't say anything else and just held her hand and pressed it against his cheek. The incident that happened that day seemed to have been easily forgotten. However, the Sun family had declined and moved out of the Flying Immortal City. The people of the Soaring Firmament Celestial Sect didn't seem to have any reaction to Sun Wei's death. Days passed but still no one came to the small house in the center of the lake. The small house in the center of the lake continued to live a quiet and comfortable life. The door was still tightly shut and very few people came out. This made the people in the city gradually stop being curious. This was because they only saw the few men who had fought with the Sun family that day. They didn't see the owner of the small house in the center of the lake. Although no one saw the owner of the small house in the center of the lake, after this battle, the families in the 4 districts of the Spirit Immortal City were extremely afraid of the small house in the center of the lake. This morning Luo Yu, Guemo, and the others were exercising in the courtyard. Seeing Fan Lin sitting at the table and drinking tea, Luo Yu smiled and said, "Fan Lin, it's rare that you haven't been to the medicine pavilion these days. Come, let's spar." Hearing this, Fan Lin smiled. I admit that I'm not your match. Go find Gu Mo or Wei Feng to spar with. Forget about them. I'll go find Leng Hua to spar with. Luo Yu grinned. After practicing a set of fist techniques, he was about to call Leng Hua to practice Tai Chi. However, before he could walk out of the courtyard, he saw Hui Lang rushing in. Fan Lin. Quick, come with me. Hui Lang swept past Luo Yu like the wind and went straight to Fan Lin, who was sitting at the table. Without saying anything, he pulled him up and rushed to the backyard. Fan Lin ran after him and asked, What's wrong? What happened? Something big has happened. Madam is about to give birth. Hui Lang said as he ran, not giving him any time to stop. Hearing this, Luo Yu and the others behind couldn't help but be startled. Master is about to give birth? Let's go. What are you still standing there for? Let's go and take a look. The few of them didn't care about anything else and immediately rushed to the main courtyard. In the main courtyard, Xianyuan Mose looked nervously at Fengjiu on the bed. His forehead was covered with cold sweat. He held her hand and asked worriedly, How is it? What do you think? Does it still hurt? Do you need to take some painkillers? Fengjiu exhaled softly. When the pain in his stomach subsided, he said, Better. Ouch. Before she could finish her sentence, she felt another wave of pain. It was the kind of pain that caused her to constrict. She couldn't help but cry out in pain, and her grip on Xianyuan Mose's hand tightened. And that she gritted her teeth and called out to Leng Hua, who was anxiously waiting outside, Leng Hua, come in and help me walk. I don't want to lie down. Can you walk like this? Xianyuan Mose asked worriedly, afraid that her legs would give way and she would fall. It's okay. This is just the beginning. It won't come out so soon. I'll get up and walk. Maybe it'll be faster. She took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. Chapter 3860. Lord Master is right. It'll be better if she gets up and walks around. Moreover, it's just started. It won't happen so soon. As soon as Qin Exin finished speaking, she saw Lord staring at her with a dark face. She felt numb and asked, What's wrong? You mean she'll be in pain for a long time? Xianyuan Mose's face was dark and scary. Yes. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose pursed his lips and asked with a dark face, How long will she be in pain? When will she give birth? Qin Exin calmed down and said, It's hard to say. Some people are faster, some people are slower. Some people will be in pain for a whole day. Feeling the air become cold, she immediately closed her mouth. Hiss. Fengjiu clenched his teeth and hissed. Xianyuan Mose was scared and quickly turned around. What's wrong? What's wrong? Is it painful again? It's nothing. Fengjiu held his stomach with one hand and gasped for breath. Leng Shuang and Bai Qingqing helped him up. At this time, Qin Exin stepped forward and said to Bai Qingqing, Qingqing, go to the kitchen and bring the breakfast I ordered. Master hasn't eaten this morning and needs to eat something. All right, Bai Qingqing replied. She allowed her to step forward and then left the room. Unexpectedly, as soon as she stepped out, she saw Hui Lang hurriedly pulling Fan Lin over. How is Madam? How is she? Has she given birth? Hui Lang asked anxiously. As soon as Fan Lin heard this, a few black lines appeared on his forehead. He was speechless as he glanced at him. He wanted to say something, but when he saw the anxious and expectant look on Fan Lin's face, he sighed in his heart and thought to himself, I won't argue with people who don't know anything. Bai Qingqing glanced at Hui Lang and said, Do you think it's so easy to give birth? She gave birth in such a short time? Why don't you give birth to one? As he spoke, he ignored Hui Lang's astonished expression and said to Fan Lin, I'll go to the kitchen to bring some food for the master. You go in and take a look. Fan Lin nodded, then shook off Hui Lang's hand that had been grabbing him. He rubbed his wrist, and when he heard Luo Yu and the others rushing over, he said to Hui Lang, Tell them to wait outside the courtyard. What are they doing here? It doesn't matter whether you can help or not. Hey, go in and take a look. Hui Lang pushed him in. In the room, Fengjiu was supported by Leng Shuang and Qin Exin. They were about to walk around the room. Xianyuan Mose was sitting in a wheelchair and watching them closely. Seeing her deathly pale face, Xianyuan Mose's heart clenched. When he saw Fan Lin enter, he asked, Fan Lin, is there anything that can ease her pain? As soon as Fan Lin opened his mouth, he was interrupted by Fengjiu. This is a necessary procedure for a woman to give birth. How can giving birth be painless? Fengjiu panted as she spoke. She gently stroked her belly and said, "This stomach hasn't gone down yet. It'll probably take a whole day." Hearing this, Xianyuan Mo's gaze was fixed on her belly. He seemed to be very dissatisfied with the two children in her belly tormenting Fengjiu. After Fan Lin came in to take a look, he said, "Master, take advantage of the time when your stomach doesn't hurt. Eat what you should eat. Even if you can't eat, you have to eat some. Giving birth requires strength. I'll go get the midwife to come over and wait in the courtyard." Chapter 3861. Xianyuan Mo's had never experienced this kind of thing before and didn't know much about women giving birth. At this time, when he heard Fan Lin say that he had to eat even if he couldn't eat, Xianyuan Mo's heart couldn't help but tighten. Because of nervousness, his face became pale and cold sweat appeared on his forehead. His breathing suddenly became rapid. Fengjiu was stroking her belly and guessed that the child would be born at night when she heard the rough breathing in her ear. She was slightly startled and looked back. She couldn't help being stunned. "Mose? What's wrong with you?" She was anxious and quickly walked forward. "Master, slow down, slow down." Qin Exin and Leng Shuang were startled and quickly supported her, fearing that she would fall down if she walked too fast. Xianyuan Mo's only felt that his heart was beating very fast, as if it had lost its rhythm. His breathing also became difficult. He held his chest with one hand and took a deep breath while calming his overly nervous mood. Fengjiu had already come to his side and put one hand on his pulse to check. With this feeling, her face couldn't help but be stunned, followed by a laugh. "Ha ha 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 ha." Ouch. Her laughter made her stomach hurt again. She couldn't help but cry out and quickly sat down on the bed. "It hurts again. Don't you have any pain relievers to eat?" As soon as Xianyuan Mo saw her clutching her stomach and turning pale from the pain, his heart clenched. His nervousness and worry caused cold sweat to form on his forehead, and his face to turn pale. Seeing this, Fengjiu felt pain and found it funny. She endured it and patted his hand, comforting him with a smile and a painful expression. Don't worry, I'm fine, I'm fine." Seeing that his face was still pale and the cold sweat on his forehead was still falling down, Fengjiu couldn't help but hold back her smile. She endured the pain in her stomach and asked, "Rose, what's wrong? Is there something wrong?" As she spoke, she wanted to check his pulse again. Just now, when she checked his pulse, she only found out that he was too nervous. Why didn't he look better now? Instead, his face was getting paler. Xianyuan Mo sat in the wheelchair and his body trembled slightly. His face was pale as if he was enduring something. Seeing Fengjiu reach out to check his pulse, he reached out to hold her hand and said in a strange voice, I think my stomach is also in pain." Fengjiu's eyes widened in astonishment. She looked at his pale face and the cold sweat on his forehead, which was even worse than her current situation. She couldn't help but blink and look at him with a dumbfounded expression. When Qin Exin saw this, she said, "Could she have eaten something bad? Do you want Fan Lin to come in and take a look?" "She didn't eat this morning. She ate the same thing I ate last night. She didn't eat anything bad." Fengjiu took a breath and said. Because of the pain in her stomach and seeing Xianyuan Mo's like this, she wanted to laugh, but she couldn't because of the pain in her stomach. The two expressions alternated, making her look extremely strange. "What's wrong with the Yama Lord?" Qin Exin asked in confusion. Fengjiu hissed, then looked at the pale-faced Xianyuan Mo and grinned. "He's too nervous, so much so that he's suffering from psychological pain." Chapter 3862. Fengjiu rubbed his forehead and leaned against the headboard saying, "How should I put it? And it means that I'm in pain and he's in pain too." Qin Exin and Leng Shuang were dumbfounded when they heard this. How could it be like this? Perhaps it was because he saw that Fengjiu was no longer in pain. Xianyuan Mo's expression eased a little, but his heart was still beating faster. His palms were a little cold and his hand that was holding Fengjiu's hand was also sweating. Fengjiu held his hand and comforted him softly. "Mose, don't worry, I'll be fine. You're in this situation because you're too nervous, so don't stay with me, go outside. Or find something else to do and distract yourself. You'll feel better." "No, I'll stay here with you," Xianyuan Mose said, unwilling to leave. His woman was suffering such pain because of him. How could he leave her side at this time and let her bear such pain alone? "I'm fine like this. If you're in pain, I'll be in pain with you." He took a deep breath and said this simple sentence with unconcealable affection. Master, the food is here. At this time Bai Qingqing came in with the food and placed it on the table. When she raised her head to look at them, she saw that the two masters' faces were pale and couldn't help but be slightly surprised. Her master's complexion was not good because she was about to give birth. It was normal for her to be in pain at this time, but why was Yamalord's face so pale? Leng Shuang, Qingqing, you two can leave. Qin Xan can stay here and take care of her. Feng Jiu ordered the two of them to leave first. Yes. The two of them responded and left the room. Qin Xan scooped 2 bowls of soup for the two of them and said, drink some soup to warm your stomach first, then eat some rice. Outside, Luo Yu, Du Fan and the others were waiting outside the courtyard. Seeing Fan Lin sitting under a tree, they went up and asked, Fan Lin, don't you want to go in and take a look? Fan Lin raised his head and glanced at Luo Yu saying, I can't help much. Master has Yen Zhu by his side and Qinqin is also inside. The midwife is already waiting in the courtyard, waiting for orders. All we can do is wait and don't make trouble for Master. When a woman gave birth to a child, what could men do to help? What's more, there were midwives and Qin Xan to help with childbirth. It was not up to a man like him to do it. When they saw Bai Qingqing and Leng Shuang walking out, the two of them were whispering to each other as they walked. They quickly went up to them and asked, how was it? What do you think? How is Master? Master and the others are eating. Bai Qingqing replied. Don't you need to take care of him inside? Only Qin Xian is inside. Will she be able to handle it? Luo Yu asked again. If she's too busy, Qin Xian will ask us to go in and help. Leng Shuang said and walked to the side and sat down. Sister, is Master's condition okay? Leng Hua asked gently, his eyes filled with worry. Don't worry. Master's fetus is in the right position and everything has been prepared. Nothing will happen. Leng Shuang's voice softened a little, his eyes looking into the courtyard. Why do I feel like I heard you ask what happened to Master? What happened to him? Is he not feeling well? Hui Lang went up and asked. Because it was only a distance away from the courtyard, for cultivators like them, even if they didn't listen carefully, they could still faintly hear some of the voices inside. Chapter 3863. The Yama Lord is too nervous, so it's a little painful. Leng Shuang glanced at them as he spoke. Seeing that they were all in a daze, he felt that it was normal. When she heard her master talk about the Yama Lord's situation, she was also stunned. After all, she had never heard of such a thing happening before. Or perhaps it had happened before, but she had never seen it before. After a long while, they regained their senses and looked at Fan Lin at the same time. They asked, is there such a situation? Under their gazes, Fan Lin involuntarily clenched his hand into a fist and coughed softly. Regardless of whether there is such a thing or not, if the Yama Lord is really like this, then such a situation is indeed happening. He looked at everyone and said, Master probably won't give birth so soon. You'd better do what you need to do. These people were all standing guard here. From time to time they would pull him aside and ask him a few questions. He already did not know how to answer them. Master is giving birth to the little master. How can I be in the mood to do anything else? I'll stay here and wait for the little master to be born. Luo Yu said and found a place to sit down. He crossed his legs and leaned against the tree behind him. Guimo looked at them and said, I've been quite free recently. There's nothing else to do. I'll stay here and wait too. Me too. Me too. Seeing that none of them intended to leave and wanted to stay here until the little master was born, Fan Lin shook his head and said, all right, all of you sit here. I'll go to the kitchen to take a look and have them prepare some food for the master and the others. I'll go with you, Bai Qingqing said. All right, let's go. He nodded and left with Bai Qingqing, leaving them here to wait. At night, shrill cries of pain sounded in the small house in the middle of the lake. Everyone in the residence felt their hearts tighten as they looked nervously at the tightly shut room in the main courtyard. Outside the door in the courtyard, Xianyuan Mose sat in a wheelchair. When he heard the shrill cries of pain coming from the room, his heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. There were several times when he wanted to rush in to be by her side, but he restrained himself. The maidservants brought in hot water in and out. The smell of blood filled the air. Basin after basin of blood was brought out from the room. His lips trembled and his face turned pale. Ah! Harder, madam, harder. At the Fungio's shrill cries and the midwife's voice rang out in everyone's ears. Du Fan and the others were anxiously pacing back and forth outside the courtyard. Hearing their master's mournful cries, they were also restless and extremely worried. Boom! Suddenly, a loud rumble came from the sky. The pitch-black clouds surged and gathered above the small building in the center of the lake. Thunderous rumbles came from the clouds, startling everyone in Spirit Immortal City and causing them to look over in shock. What's going on? Look, why are the clouds in the sky like that? On the street, the people strolling in the night market raised their heads because of the rumbling sound. Therefore, they saw the rolling clouds above the small house in the middle of the lake and didn't leave for a long time. Moreover, there were sounds of thunder coming from the clouds. Boom. Chapter 38:64. Is it at the small building at the center of the lake? A family head and a few elders looked from afar and noticed that the clouds were surging towards the small building at the center of the lake. What's going on at the small building at the center of the lake? Why would it cause such a phenomenon? I knew those people were extraordinary, but I didn't know they were so extraordinary. Such a phenomenon can't be caused by ordinary people. An old man stroked his beard and said. He looked at the surging clouds in the distance and was really curious. What was going on there? Let's go and take a look. A middle-aged man said and looked at the others in the family. Even if we go there, we won't be able to get close to the small building at the center of the lake. Have you forgotten that the people inside are all extraordinary? Now that such a phenomenon has appeared, I'm afraid we'll be suspected of having ill intentions if we get close. Hearing this, the middle-aged man said, Then let's not get close to the small building at the center of the lake. We'll just watch from nearby. We won't alarm the people inside. Look, many people are heading in that direction. Another person pointed at the figures flashing in the night ahead. The direction those people were heading in was precisely where the small house at the center of the lake was located. In that case, let's go and take a look. But remember, don't get close to the small building at the center of the lake. Otherwise, they'll treat you as an enemy and kill you. The old man said and rushed forward. The few people behind him quickly followed in the direction of the small building at the center of the lake. When they arrived near the small building at the center of the lake, there were already many cultivators gathered there. The cultivators who could withstand such a powerful pressure in the middle of the night could almost be said to be experts in the city. However, even though they were experienced and knowledgeable, they had never seen such a scene. An old man pondered and said to the people around him, Look at the sky. The clouds are surging like the waves of the sea. It's very shocking. The air pressure in the air has also become a little low. The aura of the entire world seems to be changing. What's the reason for this? Another old man stroked his beard and also pondered. He said, It doesn't seem to be a breakthrough or something like alchemy. What's going on in the small building at the center of the lake? How could it cause such a huge commotion? They released their divine senses and listened carefully, wanting to hear the sounds coming from the small house at the center of the lake. However, when they released their divine senses, they found that there was a barrier protecting them. Not only were their divine senses unable to probe into the small house at the center of the lake, they couldn't even hear the sounds coming from inside. Not only did they set up a defensive barrier, they also set up a soundproof barrier. A middle-aged man said as he looked at the small building at the center of the lake. He had no idea what was going on. Not far from the small house in the middle of the lake, the leader of the No. 1 mercenary group, Genie Feng, was standing guard with his men. Others might not know, but he knew that Madame Xinyuan was about to give birth. It was just giving birth to a child. Why would there be such a big commotion? Boom! Another thunderous roar came from the night sky. Suddenly the earth quaked and the mountains shook. Everyone in Spirit Immortal City felt the ground shake. It was as if the entire world was shaking, causing everyone in the city to cry out in alarm. Why is it moving? Chapter 38:65. Beautiful and light heavenly music came from the clouds. Everyone was stunned. They looked up and were stunned. The night sky above the small house at the center of the lake was emitting a beautiful seven-colored light. The seven-colored light was dazzling in the clouds and it flowed like a colored glaze. It was accompanied by heavenly music and it shone from high above. It was as mysterious and beautiful as a fairyland, It was faintly visible that there seemed to be magpies flapping their wings and flying high in the colorful light. The light scattered below, like stars falling from the night sky, sprinkling in the small house in the center of the lake. A vision in the sky, a vision in the sky. This is an auspicious omen. It's an auspicious omen. The colorful light in the sky, the heavenly music and the magpies are celebrating together. This is not ordinary, not ordinary. Compared with the shocked people outside, Xianyuan Mose, who was waiting outside the door in the main courtyard of the small house in the center of the lake, finally felt relieved when he heard the baby crying from inside. She gave birth. She gave birth. Master gave birth. It's a boy and a girl. Both mother and child are safe. Qin Exin ran out with sweat all over her head and said excitedly to everyone. When the people waiting outside the courtyard heard this, they all breathed a sigh of relief and grinned. Xianyuan Mose had already entered the room. At this moment, sitting in the wheelchair, he wished he could stand up and walk quickly to Fengjiu's side. Adieu. He pushed the wheelchair into the room, ignoring the smell of blood in the room. He came to the bedside and looked at the pale and weak Fengjiu. When he saw her haggard appearance after giving birth, his heart ached, and he held her hand tightly with both hands. Adieu, adieu. We won't give birth in the future, we won't give birth in the future. He couldn't say anything and just called her again and again. God knows how painful it was for him to stay outside all day and listen to her pain all day. At that moment he only thought that he would never have children again. He would never let her suffer such pain again. Fengjiu was covered in sweat, and there was a strong smell of blood on her body. When she heard Xianyuan Mose's words, a smile bloomed on her face. Say, have you seen our child? Was she good-looking? Who do you resemble more? Her voice was a little weak. Even though she had already taken a pill, she still felt tired and powerless. It was as if her entire body was falling apart and she didn't feel like her body was hers anymore. I haven't seen it yet, he said. Rest first, don't talk too much. The midwife wrapped up the two children who had been wiped clean and brought them to the bedside. She placed them beside Fengjiu and then quietly retreated. Xianyuan Mose looked at the two little things that were wrapped up from head to toe. For a moment his heart softened. He looked at the two children and saw that they were very small. At this moment they were sleeping with their eyes closed. Their skin was dark red and wrinkled. He couldn't see anything but felt that they were very ugly. He thought in his heart that he and Aju were both born very well. How could the children they gave birth to be so wrinkled and dark red? Fengjiu looked at the two children lying beside her, and a strong sense of satisfaction and happiness welled up in her heart. These were her and Moses' children. Seeing the two children safely born, all the pain she had suffered before was worth it. Chapter 3866. Xianyuan Mose glanced at the two children and said, It took you so long to come out. As soon as you came out you learned to be obedient. You know not to cry and make trouble. Hearing this, Fengjiu couldn't help but smile and closed her eyes tiredly. Seeing this, Xianyuan Mose hurriedly said, Aju, you rest first. I'll stay here with you. No one knew whether Fengjiu heard it or not. She just responded softly and fell asleep. When Qin Exin saw this, she stepped forward and said, Yama Lord, the smell of blood in the room is too strong. Why don't you go outside and wait for a while? I'll disperse the smell inside. Then I'll help Master wipe her body and change her clothes before you come in. As Qin Exin spoke, she bent down and picked up the two children. Seeing this, Xianyuan Mose asked, Where are you going to take the two children? Qin Exin paused and said, I'll take the two little masters to the small room first. As soon as she finished speaking, she asked with a smile, Yama Lord, why don't you go and accompany the two little masters? Come back to Master later? Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose paused for a moment. Seeing that Fengjiu had fallen asleep, he asked, How is Aju's situation? Yama Lord, don't worry. Master's fine. It's just that giving birth consumed a lot of physical strength. She is a little weak now. Let her have a good sleep. When she wakes up, she will gradually recover. However, she has to go through confinement for the next month. You have to take good care of her and don't let her get sick. Otherwise, it will be very troublesome in the future. Xianyuan Mose nodded and said, You know what to do. Pay more attention and take good care of her. I'll come over later. Yes. Qin Exin responded and carried the two children to the small room. Xianyuan Mose followed her to the small room first. This small house was remodeled from the neighboring house so that Fengjiu could stay in the house after she gave birth. The small house was connected to the main house so that it was convenient to take care of her. Du Fan and the others who were waiting outside could not wait any longer. After asking around and finding out that both mother and child were safe, they looked forward to seeing the two newborn babies. Can we go in and take a look? Yes. Can we go in and take a look? Hey, I want to see the little master. Let me go in first. Hui Lang said to Bai Qingqing and Leng Shuang, who were guarding the door, as he squeezed his way forward. Bai Qingqing and Leng Shuang also wanted to go in and see the little master, but the little master was in the side room of the main room. If they wanted to go in, they had to go through the door of the main room. The situation inside was not settled yet, so they could not go in now. Let's wait a little longer. Leng Shuang said, standing still. Why don't you carry him out for me to take a look? Hui Lang was the most impatient person. The little master that he had been waiting for so long was finally born. He could not wait to see them immediately. Leng Shuang glanced at him and did not say anything. Leng Hua saw this and smiled gently. He said to Hui Lang, then wait a little longer. But later, keep your voice down so that you don't scare the little master. I know, Hui Lang replied. Not long after, Qin Exen smiled and gestured for them to go in. They walked towards the small room and saw the Yama Lord sitting by the bed looking at the two children on the bed. They rushed forward. Ah, they're so ugly. Hui Lang went forward to take a look and instinctively shouted, why are they so small? They're black and red and wrinkled. Why aren't they white and chubby? Hui Lang stared at the two wrinkled children in astonishment. Chapter 3867. So ugly? Du Fan and the others all looked at him at the same time, their eyes shining with an unknown light. He actually dared to say that the two little masters were ugly? Did he forget to bring his brain with him when he went out? Why are you all looking at me? Hui Lang looked at them, confused. Seeing them all staring at him, especially his master who also glanced at him coldly, he felt his hair stand on end. It's nothing. Du Fan smiled and patted him on the shoulder with an unfathomable smile. The two little masters look exactly the same. Aren't they fraternal twins? How can they be exactly the same? Luo Yu looked at them curiously and saw that the two little meatballs looked like they were made from the same mold. It was impossible to tell which was the boy and which was the girl. Yama Lord, which one is the older brother? Which one is the younger sister? Wei Feng asked curiously. The one outside is the older brother and the one inside is the younger sister, Xian Yuanmo said, looking at the two children with a gentle gaze. Why did you wrap up their hands and bodies? Won't it be uncomfortable to sleep like this? This way they won't scratch themselves, Fan Lin said as he looked at the two children. By the side, Fan Lin said as he looked at the two tiny babies. He smiled and said, newborn children haven't grown up yet. When they grow up, the blackish-red color of their skin will gradually fade and their appearance will also gradually change. In the room they were still happily discussing the children. At this time, when the rainbow light and heavenly music in the night sky faded, voices of congratulations came from the sky. Congratulations to Xianyuan Monarch for having a son. Congratulations to Ghost Doctor for having a son. Congratulations to Azure Dragon Monarch for having a son. Congratulations to Phoenix Master for having a son. Congratulations to Xianyuan Monarch and Ghost Doctor for having a son. Congratulations to Azure Dragon Monarch and Phoenix Master for having a son. Voices of congratulations came from the clouds. The rainbow light and heavenly music that had faded gradually played again because of the voices from the clouds, and the light became even more dazzling. Hearing the voices of congratulations and the way they addressed them, the entire Spirit Immortal City and even the High Firmament Celestial Sect were shocked. Monarch? Xianyuan Monarch and Ghost Doctor? Azure Dragon Monarch? Phoenix Master? Although they had never heard of the Xianyuan Sovereign or the Ghost Doctor, nor did they know of the Azure Dragon Sovereign or the Phoenix Master, anyone who could be called a sovereign must be the ruler of heaven and earth. The Lord of heaven and earth. When the cultivators thought of this, they all sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at the small building in the center of the lake in disbelief. The person living inside was actually the monarch of the world. Which world's monarch was he? How could the sovereigns of the various realms appear outside the world and send messages of congratulations? While everyone was still in shock, An even more shocking scene occurred that we're here to congratulate the Azure Dragon Sovereign and the Ghost Doctor on giving birth to Lin. We're here to bless and cleanse the spirit of the newborn. However, we're separated by the heavens and the earth, so we can't congratulate you in person. Please forgive us, Azure Dragon Sovereign and the Ghost Doctor. That deep and distant voice seemed to come from ancient times as it reverberated in the sky and entered everyone's ears. In the main courtyard of the small house in the center of the lake, when the crowd surrounding the two children heard the voice coming from outside, they were all startled and looked at Xianyuan Mose at the same time. Chapter 38:68. Hearing the commotion outside, Xianyuan Mose gestured for Leng Hua, who was standing next to him, to carry the two children into his arms. Then he brought the two children to the courtyard outside in a wheelchair. Everyone has traveled thousands of miles to come and congratulate me. The sovereign thanks you all. A deep voice that contained a powerful aura and spirit energy spread out, clearly transmitting into the clouds. When it landed in the ears of the sovereigns in outer space, it shook the hearts of everyone in Spirit Immortal City. In the next moment, the golden light that gathered the blessings of the sovereigns sprinkled down from the clouds with a gentle aura, accurately landing on the two children in Xianyuan Mose's arms in the small building at the center of the lake. The blessings from the immortal sovereigns would naturally extend their good fortune. In the future, these blessings would bring them endless benefits. Therefore, Xianyuan Mose naturally would not reject their blessings and spirit cleansing. The so-called blessing and spirit cleansing referred to the blessing of awakening the hidden spirit energy in the children. With the sovereigns cleansing the spirits of the two children, not to mention their innate talent, their future cultivation would be 1,000 miles. Everyone in the city stared blankly at this scene, their hearts filled with shock. Blessing and spirit cleansing. The blessing and spirit cleansing from the sovereigns of heaven and earth was something that had never been heard of in millions of years. Now they were actually witnessing such a grand occasion. The two newborn children were blessed with such good fortune. They were truly dragons among dragons and phoenixes. Even among millions of people there was no one like them. It was truly enviable. When the people of the high firmament celestial sect saw the scene in the sky and heard the words, they were all shocked speechless. Sovereigns. Sovereigns of heaven and earth. Sovereigns of heaven and earth had never appeared in their world. They did not expect that sovereigns would appear in their world and they did not know about it. Duan Yunhe looked at the scene in the sky and sighed in his heart. He knew that these people had extraordinary origins, but he did not expect them to be unreachable figures like the sovereigns of heaven and earth. In the courtyard of the small building at the center of the lake, Du Fan and the others looked at the golden light that fell on the two children with smiles and joy in their eyes. How wonderful! The two young masters were blessed and cleansed by the various monarchs. That was truly a blessing. Xianyuan Mose looked at the two children in his arms. The two children, who were originally sleeping, moved their little heads comfortably, closed their eyes and fell asleep. They even grinned from ear to ear. Seeing the two children like this, his heart softened. The way he looked at the two children was so gentle that he didn't look like a ruthless monarch. Instead, he looked like an ordinary father who loved and spoiled his children. When the golden light dissipated, he looked up at the seven-colored light and said in a low voice, "On behalf of my two children, I thank you all." Azure Dragon Sovereign, you're exaggerating. In the clouds, several voices could be heard. They laughed and said, "If that's the case, we will take our leave." As soon as they finished speaking, the seven-colored light in the night sky gradually dissipated. The churning clouds also gradually parted, and the night sky returned to its usual appearance. Only the stars twinkled in the pitch-black night. Xianyuan Mose looked at the two children in his arms and said to Qin Exen and Bai Qingqing, "Carry the children inside. Don't catch a cold." "Yes." The two answered and walked forward to take the children and send them back to their rooms. Chapter 38:69. Yes. Fan Lin responded and turned to leave. Next, the mistress was going to eat the food that could be eaten during the confinement period. Fortunately, they had already ordered someone to brew wine. And they would first have someone use the wine to stew a spirit chicken to nourish the mistress's body. That night, because Fengjiu gave birth to a pair of twins, everyone in the Fu was excited and happy. Even though it was late at night, no one felt sleepy. The two children were sent back to their rooms to rest, and the mistress was also resting. They did not dare to disturb her, so they all went to the front courtyard to drink and celebrate. In the main courtyard, Xian Yuanmos sat by the bed and accompanied Fengjiu. He did not go to rest but sat in the wheelchair and watched her sleep on the bed. She was exhausted. Her face was pale and she looked exhausted. Fortunately, both mother and child were safe. The next morning, Fengjiu was awakened by the sound of a baby crying. When she woke up, she saw Xian Yuanmos sitting by the bed and watching over her. The baby was crying in the small room outside. "You're awake? Are you hungry? I'll have someone prepare some food for you," Xian Yuanmos said. Just as he was about to call someone in, he heard her words. "Why aren't you sleeping? What's wrong with the baby? Why are you crying?" Fengjiu asked. She wanted to get up, but this movement tugged at the wound on her lower body. She could not help but hiss and frown slightly. "Don't move. Just lie down." Xian Yuanmos quickly pressed her down and told her to lie down and not move. He said, "The baby is fine. Perhaps he's crying because he's hungry. Qin Xian and the others are taking care of him." Hearing this, Fengjiu's heart relaxed. She said, "Let Qin Xian and the others bring the baby over. I'll feed him." "But your body right now." Xian Yuanmos was a little worried. Before the child was born, Fengjiu insisted on feeding the child herself after giving birth, so they didn't hire a wet nurse. They just raised 2 dairy sheep in the back of the mountain. After the child was born, he cried a few times and then fell asleep obediently. He didn't wake up and cry until just now. However, he was a little worried about her health. She was so weak. Could she feed 2 children? Would her body not be able to take it? Fengjiu smiled. "My body is recovering. I'm not as weak as you think. Let them bring the child over." Seeing this, Xian Yuanmos had no choice but to let Qin Xian and Bai Qingqing carry the child over. "Master, Yama Lord." The 2 of them came forward with the child in their arms and bowed to them. "Wah, wah." The baby's cries were loud and clear. "Quickly bring him over and let me see," Fengjiu said. She supported herself on the bed with both hands and tried to sit up. Seeing this, Xian Yuanmos quickly helped her to sit up and said, "Be careful." He considerately took a pillow and stuffed it behind her waist to make her more comfortable. Fengjiu took the 2 children and held them in her arms. Looking at the 2 crying children, she could not help but coax them with heartache. "Be good, don't cry. Mother is here." Qin Xian and Bai Qingqing left, leaving Xian Yuanmos alone in the room. Leng Shuang was guarding outside the door. When he saw the 2 of them come out, he glanced at them. "Master is awake. I'll go to the kitchen and bring some food over," Qin Xian said with a smile and walked out. "I'll go and help," Bai Qingqing said and followed. Chapter 3870. Fengjiu was startled. She hurriedly said to Xian Yuanmos, "You carry one." Xian Yuanmos was a little flustered as he carried a crying child. He saw Fengjiu undo her lapel and pull her clothes down slightly, revealing a patch of snow-white skin as well as that plump. He was stunned. His burning gaze stared at her half-exposed snow-white shoulders, as well as those plump breasts that made it hard for him to look away. But before he could look enough, he saw her carrying the child to her half-exposed chest. The little fellow was originally crying with his eyes closed, but when his little mouth sucked in the sweet mother's milk, his crying suddenly stopped. He sucked like a little puppy, even making sobbing sounds. Seeing this, he had the urge to go forward and pick up the little bastard and throw him away. Fengjiu saw that the little fellow had stopped crying, then smiled. She looked up and saw Xian Yuanmos staring at the child in her arms with a dark expression. She couldn't help but burst out laughing. "Why are you staring like this?" Xian Yuanmos glanced at his son in Fengjiu's arms and said, "Audiobook, why don't we find a wet nurse for the 2 children?" As soon as he said this, Fengjiu knew what he meant. Her beautiful eyes turned and she glared at him. She said unhappily, "You're the child's father. The child has just been born and you already know how to be jealous of the child." Xian Yuanmos's face was slightly uncomfortable when she said this. His ears were slightly red. He said, "I'm worried that you won't be able to feed the 2 of them." "How can I not know you?" Fengjiu glanced at him in disbelief. Seeing that the child in her arms had been eating for a while, she handed him to Xian Yuanmos. At the same time, she took her daughter and switched sides to feed her. Xian Yuanmos took the child and saw the little fellow smacking his lips. There was a trace of milk at the corner of his mouth. A pair of black eyes blinked and stared at him. Kid, I'm your father. As Xianyuan Mose spoke, he stared at his son in his arms. But in the next moment his face darkened. He held the child with both hands and lifted him up. He glanced at the large wet patch on his robe. Puchi. Ah. When Fengjiu saw this scene, she couldn't help but laugh. When she laughed, the little guy who had eaten his fill also giggled. Seeing the mother and son laughing so happily, Xianyuan Mose's originally dark expression also eased. He sighed helplessly and said, "This brat really needs to be taught a lesson." Fengjiu laughed for a while and calmed down, but the corners of his mouth were still upturned. He said, "Quickly let Qin Exen and the others come in to take care of the children. You go take a bath first, then go to sleep. I don't need to stand guard here anymore." She was not clean yet, so she naturally couldn't let him sleep in the same bed with her. Moreover, he didn't rest while standing guard here. Seeing that he was a little tired, she naturally hoped that he could go to sleep first. "I'm not tired. I'll take a bath first and then come back." As Xianyuan Mose spoke, he placed the child by the side of the bed, then pushed Lun Lin out. When they were outside, he said to Leng Shuang, who was outside the door, "Go in and take care of him." "Yes." Leng Shuang responded and then went inside. At this time, in front of the door of the small house in the middle of the lake, many family heads came in person with congratulatory gifts. After one of them knocked on the door of the small house in the middle of the lake, he waited nervously. Chapter 3871. Seeing Leng Hua, the crowd smiled and said, "We know that your esteemed mistress has just given birth to Lin, so we specially came here to congratulate you. We hope you'll accept it." Hearing this, Leng Hua smiled gently and said, "Thank you for your kindness. However, my mistress has instructed that we won't accept any gifts. I will convey your intentions to my mistress. These are just some things to nourish the body. They're not expensive gifts. Since we've brought them here, we don't intend to take them back. We hope you'll accept them," one of the middle-aged men said. He didn't hand the things over to Leng Hua. Instead, he placed them in front of the door, cupped his hands in salute and turned to leave. It was as if he was afraid that if he was too slow, Leng Hua would have to take the things back. When the others saw this, they also put down the things and hurriedly left. Leng Hua was slightly surprised. Looking at the mountain-like pile of gifts, he couldn't help but shake his head and laugh. Forget it. Since they've already brought the things here, he'll just take them in. Thus, after the crowd left, he flicked his sleeve and put all the things into his space. Then he closed the door and walked inside. "Leng Hua, who's outside?" Luo Yu asked, tossing a red fruit in his hand. When he arrived in front of Leng Hua, he handed the fruit to him. "I'm not eating. You can have it," Leng Hua said with a warm smile. "Some of the family heads in the city sent gifts to congratulate you on giving birth to a little master. There are so many of them. I'm just about to open them and see what's inside." "I see. Then I'll go with you. Let's see what they've brought." Luo Yu took a bite of the fruit and motioned for him to go to the front yard. The two of them went to the front hall and opened the gifts to check. Seeing that most of them were nourishing herbs for nourishing the body, they tidied up the things and went to the backyard. What a fragrant wine. Luo Yu smelled the wine as soon as he entered the yard. He took a few deep breaths and hurriedly asked, "There's also the fragrance of spirit chicken in the wine. What's so delicious about it?" "It's wine chicken soup for the master." Qin Exen came out with the things and smiled. "Why are you here?" "Wine chicken soup. Is there anything else? Give me half a bowl to try." Luo Yu grinned and said greedily, "Yes, you can eat in the kitchen if you want." Qin Exen chuckled. "This wine chicken soup is naturally very delicious. It's specially made for women in confinement. I also made Crucian carp soup. Do you want to have a bowl too?" "Crucian carp soup? Is that also good for the body?" Luo Yu asked curiously. Qin Exen pursed her lips into a smile and said, "There's a saying in medical books. Women don't have enough breast milk. Drinking Crucian carp soup can help." Cough cough. Luo Yu choked on his saliva and his face turned red. He quickly waved his hand. No, I don't need it. I don't want to drink the chicken soup." When Leng Hua heard their conversation, the smile on his face deepened. He looked at Qin Exen and said, "Just now the people in the city sent some nourishing things. I was just about to give them to you and pick some for Master to eat." "What are they?" "Now Master is eating nutritious and nourishing things. Some of the herbs can't be used. Qin Exen said and followed them to the stone table in the yard with the plate in her hand. Chapter 3872. He was here just now, but Master asked him to rest in the back room. Qin Exen said. Hearing this, Luo Yu asked again, where are the two little masters? They should be asleep in Master's room. Seeing this, Luo Yu asked again, will I disturb Master's rest if I go in now? Qin Exen smiled. If you want to see Master, it's better to wait a few days. Master needs to rest more now and recuperate well. Okay then. Luo Yu said and did not go forward. Instead he turned back and sat down at the table. Qin Exen put away the things and said, then I'll go to the kitchen first. Are my sister and the others waiting on Master in his room? Leng Hua asked. Yes, they are all helping to take care of the little masters. Qin Exen smiled and walked out. Since there was nothing to do, Luo Yu thought of something. He looked at Leng Hua and grinned. Leng Hua, since there is nothing to do recently, why don't we arrange a celebration tonight? After all, it's such a joyous occasion for Master to give birth to a little master. We can't just drink a few glasses of wine like we did last night, right? Hearing this, Leng Hua nodded. Yes, that's a good idea. I'll tell Master or Yama Lord about it later. We don't have many friends here, so we can invite them to join in the fun. You mean Duan Yunhe and Jeannie Feng? Luo Yu asked. Yes, other than them we don't have any friends, right? Hearing this, Luo Yu touched his chin and thought for a while. Okay, then I'll go and prepare first. Since we want to invite them, we have to do it in advance. I'll go and arrange it now. You can tell Master and Yama Lord about it later. They should agree. Leng Hua responded. After watching him leave, he walked towards the main house and knocked on the door. Master. Fengjiu, who was watching the two sleeping children in the room, heard Leng Hua's voice outside. He gestured to the Leng Shuang beside the bed. Let him in. Yes. Leng Shuang replied softly so as not to disturb the sleeping young master. After Leng Shuang went out, Bai Qingqing went forward to put down the bed curtains. After all, her mistress was only wearing an inner robe and her black hair was loose. She could not let them see her mistress in this state. Leng Shuang came to the outer room. After opening the door, she looked at her brother and said softly, the little master is sleeping. Keep your voice down. Don't startle them. Okay. Leng Hua responded and followed her in. After entering, Leng Hua did not raise his head. Instead he bowed slightly and said, Master, the various families in the city sent some nourishing gifts to congratulate Master on giving birth to Lin. I didn't want to accept their gifts, but they left after putting them down. So I put the gifts away and gave them to Qin Exen to take care of. I asked her to pick something for Master to eat to nourish Master's body. Hearing this, Fengjiu replied, all right, I'll take it then. It's nothing. Leng Hua said, there's one more thing. What is it? Fengjiu asked lazily. We want to hold a banquet tonight to celebrate the birth of the little master. We want to invite Duan Yunhe and Jeannie Feng. You can arrange these things. There's no need to ask. Go. Let's celebrate and make it lively. Fengjiu said with a smile. He would let them arrange it themselves. Chapter 3873. Luo Yu and the rest arranged everything, and the residence was decorated with lanterns and colored banners. Originally, Luo Yu and the rest had chosen to celebrate today, but when they talked to the others, they said that it would be better to celebrate together on the third day of the Lunar New Year. However, after thinking about it, they felt that tomorrow was the third day of the Lunar New Year and they could celebrate together. As such, there was this lively banquet today. Leader, someone sent an invitation over. The mercenary handed an exquisite invitation to Jeannie Feng, and looked at it curiously. Leader, who did they send the invitation to? Jeannie Feng took a look at the exquisite invitation and was slightly surprised. He reached out to erase the seal and took out the invitation. After taking a look, he couldn't help but be startled. It's an invitation from the small house in the middle of the lake. An invitation from the small villa in the middle of the lake? The mercenary couldn't help but move forward. Leader, why did they send you an invitation? Jeannie Feng closed the invitation and glanced at him. Go do what you need to do. As he spoke, he strode out. He didn't expect them to send him an invitation to celebrate. However, since the other party sent him an invitation, he had to prepare something as a congratulatory gift. But what should he give? On the other side, Duan Yunhe also received the invitation. When he saw the invitation he was also surprised. He didn't expect them to invite him to celebrate. Therefore he began to prepare. After choosing a gift, he left the sect and went to the small building in the middle of the lake. In the evening, Xianyuan Mose came to the master bedroom and saw Fengjiu playing with the two children. The two children were lying next to her and giggling. Hearing the mother and children's laughter, his gaze softened. Mose, you're here? Come and see, these two children are so beautiful when they laugh. Fengjiu called out to him as she played with the children. Xianyuan Mose went forward and saw that the cloth wrapped around the two children had been changed to two different colors, one white and one pink. Clearly it was to distinguish them. However, even if it wasn't distinguished, the children could still distinguish them. This was because there was a small red dot between the girl's eyebrows. It was just that it was hard to see because of her dark red skin. Why aren't you resting? He came to the bedside and looked at her. With one hand he carried his daughter who was sleeping inside. He lowered his head and gently touched her little lips with his finger. He saw her break into a smile. Seeing this, Xianyuan Mose also smiled and praised, "My daughter's eyes are like yours. They are so beautiful. She will definitely be a beauty when she grows up." Upon hearing this, Fengjiu pursed his lips and smiled. Of course our children won't be bad. However, the children are already born. Have you thought of a name for them? What should we name it? Xianyuan Mose looked up at her and said, "I've already decided. Let's call our son Muchen and our daughter Muyu." Hearing these two names, Fengjiu was startled. Muchen, Muyu? She looked at him with a complicated gaze and asked, "Why do you want to name them like this?" Xianyuan Mose looked at her and said, "Although I haven't said or mentioned anything, I have always remembered that Imochen died for us. If it wasn't for him, how could we have such a happy life now?" Mu means to miss and admire and Chin means him. I hope that in the future the children will also know that there was such a person who died for us. Chapter 3874. Hearing this, Fengjiu softly called out, "Muchen Muyu? Xianyuan Muchen Xianyuan Muyu." She looked at him and revealed a gentle smile. These names are really good. Xianyuan Mose held her hand with one hand and the child with the other. "Ajio, Imochen doesn't have any children. I want our children to acknowledge him as their adoptive father. What do you think?" Hearing this, Fengjiu's heart trembled. She didn't think that he would make such an arrangement. For a moment she was speechless. Imochen died for them. She had always felt guilty and owed him. If their children could acknowledge him as their adoptive father, that would be the best. Okay. Her eyes reddened as she nodded. Xianyuan Mose let go of her hand and touched her face instead. "You're in confinement, so don't be too emotional. Rest well and don't sit too often. Just lie down more often." As he spoke, he took the other child from her arms and said, "You should sleep. I'll take the children to the outer room." Fengjiu responded. She watched as he called for Leng Shuang to come in and help carry the child away. Only then did she lie down and close her eyes. Although cultivators like them didn't have to go through confinement like ordinary women, it was better to take care of their bodies as much as possible. This way they wouldn't be left with any lingering illnesses in the future. Perhaps it was because the matter on her mind had been settled, but she felt very relaxed. Not long after, she fell into a deep slumber. As the night fell, laughter filled the small house in the middle of the lake. Delicious wine and food were placed on the table. Du Fan and the others sat on the side and rested. Luo Yu grinned and said, "Today's wine is a good wine that I've kept for a long time. Later you should all drink a few more cups. I'm only willing to let you drink because it's a joyous occasion like the little master's birth." "Ah, alright. We'll definitely drink a lot later. But before we get drunk you can't lie down." Du Fan laughed and patted his shoulder. "With my alcohol tolerance, how could I lie down? Just wait and see. Tonight, even if all of you are dead drunk, I will still be sitting sober," Luo Yu said with a smile. He glanced outside and said, "Why isn't Chi Kong here yet? Does he have so many things to do in the City Lord Mansion?" Guemo glanced at the sky and said, "The sky is dark now. It's still early." At this moment, Leng Hua, who was walking towards the front yard, heard a knock on the door and walked towards it. The servant had already invited the person in. When he saw that it was Genie Feng, he smiled and went up to him. "Commander Jean, please come in." "Young Master Leng." Genie Feng cupped his fists and bowed. As he followed him inside, he said, I didn't expect that everyone would send me an invitation. This Jean is really flattered. Leng Hua smiled warmly and said, Commander Jean is a man of honor and has a relationship with us. Now that the City Lord Mansion is celebrating, we naturally hope to share in the joy. As the two spoke, they arrived at the front yard. Looking at the people in the yard, Jean Yifeng bowed to them and then handed something to Leng Hua. This is a small gift to congratulate Madame Xinyuan on giving birth to Lin. Commander Jean is too kind. I thank Commander Jean on behalf of my master. Leng Hua accepted the gift and stored it in his space. Chapter 3875. When Jean Yifeng heard this, he hurriedly stepped forward and said, It's hard to refuse such great hospitality. I won't leave until I'm drunk. Looks like we're late. You've already served the wine and dishes. A laughing voice rang out. Everyone turned around and saw Qi Kong and Duan Yunhe walking over together. When Du Fan saw them, he smiled and said, We've been waiting for you guys. The wine today is from Luo Yu's collection. Then I'm in for a treat today, Duan Yunhe said with a smile. He took out a congratulatory gift and said, Here are some small things. Thank you. Leng Hua took the gift and stored it in her space. She said, My mistress is still in confinement, so we can make ourselves comfortable. Please take a seat. Thus, everyone sat down and started chatting. They poured wine and picked up food to eat. They were lively in the front courtyard while Xinyuan Mose accompanied the two children and Fengjiu in the back courtyard. Leng Hua and the others waited on them in the courtyard. That night they drank until midnight before everyone supported each other to rest. Duan Yunhe and Jean Yifeng also stayed in the small house at the center of the lake because they were drunk. They only left at noon the next day. The days quietly passed in a warm atmosphere. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. In the main courtyard, Grey Wolf was carefully carrying a white and tender child. With a curious expression, he said, Strange, this little master was so wrinkled when he was just born. How did he grow so white and tender in just 3 months? How did he grow so cute? Look at her, she's so beautiful. He couldn't help but reach out a hand to touch the child's face. It was smooth and tender and had the unique milky scent of a baby. His heart melted at the sight of it. What? Suddenly the child started crying. When she started crying, Hui Lang panicked. He anxiously coaxed her. Don't cry, don't cry. I won't touch you. However, as soon as he finished speaking, his body couldn't help but stiffen. His chest was warm and moist, causing him to stand there dumbfounded. Ah! Look, the little mistress peed all over him again. Luo Yu slapped his thigh and laughed heartily. Seeing Hui Lang's frozen expression, he gloated. Bai Qingqing smiled and walked forward. Let me help the little master change. She took the child from Grey Wolf's hands and carried him into the house. Little Mu Yu, who was being held in Leng Hua's arms, giggled when she heard everyone laughing. The little child's bright eyes narrowed into a line. No matter how one looked at her, she was adorable. Little Yu is smiling, look. Leng Hua warmly said. When he saw his little master smiling, he couldn't help but smile as well. The 3-month-old children were fair and tender. They had already grown up and would giggle when they were teased. Therefore everyone liked to play with them when they had nothing to do. Fengjiu and Xinyuan Mose were in the room. She was pricking the acupuncture points on his feet with silver needles and asked, How is it? Do you feel anything? No. Xinyuan Mose said. He looked at his legs with deep eyes. Hearing this, Fengjiu sighed softly in her heart. She smiled and said, It's okay. There will always be a way. Later I'll try another prescription. Xinyuan Mose looked at her and said, It's okay. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. I'm fine like this. Fengjiu put away the silver needles and sat next to him. Mose, I want to go to the Myriad Buddhist sect. Chapter 3876. Fengjiu said with a smile, The child has been born, the confinement period is over, and her body has recovered well, so I plan to leave after a few days. However, the child is still young, so I want to take him with me. Moreover, we have always been together more than apart, so this time I hope you can also accompany me. Well, the child and I will accompany you. Xinyuan Mose showed a smile, held her hand and said, At that time, we will settle down in a nearby place and you can do what you want to do. Well, then I will tell them later and let them prepare. Fengjie stood up with a smile, pushed the wheelchair and said, "Let's go and see the child." The two went out, and when they came outside they saw that they were all surrounding the two children. After a while one child was hugged by the other, and the child did not cry or make a fuss. Instead they giggled. "I know it is you," or without looking. Shenyuan Mose came out of the door, and after seeing this scene the corners of his mouth slightly raised. Thinking about it, only you, who loved to laugh, would let them fight to hug her without crying or making a fuss. If it was Chinner, he would have cried long ago. "Master, do you think the little masters have a problem with me? Why do they urinate on me every time I hug them?" Hui Lang came to Shenyuan Mose with a bitter face and said. Shenyuan Mose glanced at him and said with a low and magnetic voice and a smile, "That is because they take special care of you." "Ah yes, it is because the little masters take special care of you." Luo Yu at one side laughed, winked at Hui Lang and said, "I remember that when the little masters were born, the first sentence you said was that they were very ugly. Ah, wait and see. When they grow up I will tell them about it." Hearing this, Hui Lang immediately cried, "Ah? Don't. Luo Yu, are you still my good brother? At that time I didn't mean to." Yes. You accidentally said what you were thinking." I know. Luo Yu nodded cooperatively and couldn't help but grin. Looking at Hui Lang's anxious face, everyone laughed. "Come, let me hold him," Fengjie said as he walked in front of Fan Lin and took the child from his arms. As soon as the child was in her arms, it seemed to smell the familiar scent on her body. Immediately it giggled happily. Its little face rubbed against Fengjie's arms like a kitten. "Master, why are the spiritual auras of the two little masters so abundant? They haven't cultivated yet, but the aura on their bodies seems to be flowing in their bodies." Many people were puzzled. Logically speaking, shouldn't he wait until he was cultivating before drawing chi into his body? But the spiritual auras of the two little masters seemed to be innate and extremely pure, which really puzzled him. Fengjie smiled slightly and hugged her daughter. "They have innate bodies. Before they were born, they had already absorbed the spiritual aura in my body, so they can't be compared to ordinary children." Saying this, her voice paused and she smiled. "Moreover, they have received the blessings and cleansing of their spirits from the various monarchs. In the future, their cultivation will advance by leaps and bounds." Chapter 3877. By the way, you should arrange the things at hand. We'll set off for the Myriad Buddha's sect in a few days, Fengjie said. Hearing this, everyone was stunned. They looked at each other and asked, "Master, where's the Myriad Buddha's sect?" They had lived here for almost a year. Were they going to leave now? "Let Chi Kong tell you the details later." Fan Lin nodded and said, "Well, I'll go back and arrange the things in the medicine tower." He paused and asked, "Master, will you come back here in the future?" Maybe not, but the Spirit Immortal City is a big town and the Lingxiao Celestial Sect is here. Maybe I'll have a chance to come back in the future. Whether they would come back or not depended on whether it was necessary. They had planned to stay here for a while, but now the people here knew their identities and it was inconvenient for them to go in and out. It didn't matter whether they stayed or not. Hearing this, everyone nodded and said, "Well, let's go and prepare. Qingqing, you and Qin Xan go out and buy some things that the children need. There are many things in this city that can't be found anywhere else. Buy more things that you need in case you need them on the way." Fengjie told them to go out. "All right." The two of them replied. Fengjie and Shenyuan Mose were playing with the children in the yard, while the others went to arrange the things at hand. In the East City Lord's mansion, many people came to the mansion to tell Chi Kong about Fengjie's idea. Chi Kong pondered for a while and said, "Since we're going to leave, I'll have to leave as the city lord. How about this? Let's go back and discuss with our master who will take over the city lord's mansion." Many people looked at him and asked, "Do you have a candidate?" Chi Kong smiled and said, "I prefer Genie Feng, the leader of the first mercenary group. If he takes over the East City Lord's mansion, it will be more convenient for us to do things in the future. In that case, let's go. Let's go back and talk to our master." Thus, the two of them headed towards the small building in the center of the lake. In the main courtyard, when Chi Kong told Fengjie his idea, Fengjie nodded and said, "All right, we'll do as you say. However, if he takes over the position of East City Lord, I'm sure the people in the city won't accept it. Therefore, ask the people from the High Firmament Celestial Sect to go over and arrange this matter." "All right, then I'll do it now." Chi Kong said, bowed and retreated. Well. After Chi Kong left, the child burst into tears. Xianyuan Mose, who was standing to the side, saw his daughter crying as well as his son in Fengjiu's arms. He said, maybe he's hungry. Come, give them to me. I'll carry them into the room to feed them. She stepped forward to take the children and carried both of them into the room. After seeing her enter the room, Xianyuan Mose looked at Qin Exin in the courtyard and asked, what stew did you make for her today? Qin Exin replied, today's stew is spiritual pig trotter soup. However, our master thought it was a little greasy, so he prepared some lighter stew. Go to the kitchen and bring some here. Xianyuan Mose said and motioned for her to go to the kitchen and bring some stew. Yes. Qin Xin bent her knees and bowed, then left. Chapter 3878. Xianyuan Mose came in and saw her sitting by the bed with the two children in her arms. She had a smile on her face and her eyes were gentle and loving. His heart softened. This was his wife and children. They were the people he wanted to protect. They were the most important family in his life. Looking at them and thinking about the black lotus of destruction that was now in the hands of the Devil Lord, he narrowed his eyes and the smile on his face gradually disappeared. He placed one hand on his knees and his eyes were unreadable. Fengjiu put the two children on the bed. Seeing him staring at her feet by the door, she couldn't help but feel her heart ache. She walked forward and came to his side. What's wrong? Nothing, Xianyuan Mose said as he held her hand and looked inside. Are the children asleep? Yes, they are asleep. Fengjiu smiled and said, the two of them are just like Hua when he was young. They also sleep after eating. Speaking of which, we haven't seen Hua for a long time. I wonder how he is now. Thinking of Hua, who had been by her side for 5 years, Fengjiu couldn't help but miss him. Back then she had let him go back with his biological parents. It had been more than a year now. That child was already 6 years old. She wondered how much taller he had grown. Don't worry. He is going back to his biological parents. They will treat him very well. Xianyuan Mose said and said to Fengjiu, I asked Qin Exin to bring you some stew. Drink some. Upon hearing this, Fengjiu put her hand on her forehead and said helplessly, drink again? Look at how round my waist has become after my confinement. Xianyuan Mose's lips curved slightly. He stroked her waist with one hand and said, no, this is also very good. I like it. Fengjiu saw him stroking her waist with one hand and saying such words. She glanced at him with her beautiful eyes and said, don't be so naughty. Yamalord Master, the stew is here. In the courtyard outside, Qin Exin put the stew on the table. The two people in the room looked at each other, pursed their lips and smiled, then walked out. In the high firmament celestial sect, everyone had gathered in the main hall because of Qi Kang's arrival. Only a few people in the high firmament celestial sect had seen him before. Since he was with the sovereign, they couldn't help but size him up. Duan Yun, he looked at Qi Kong and said, Sect Master is currently in closed-door cultivation, so he can't come out. If there's anything you need, you can tell us. Everyone here is an elder and a peak master of the high firmament celestial sect. Upon hearing this, Qi Kong nodded and said, there's only one reason I'm here today. I'd like to pass the position of East City Governor to the leader of the first mercenary group. However, if he takes over my position halfway, the people in the city will be dissatisfied. Therefore, I hope the high firmament celestial sect can make the arrangements. Hearing this, everyone was slightly surprised and couldn't help but look at each other. One of the elders asked, what about you? Why aren't you the East City Lord anymore? Aren't you doing well? We're preparing to leave and probably won't be back in a short period of time. Therefore, I can't continue to be the East City Governor. Qi Kong said in a deep voice. He looked at everyone and said, the quality of a city governor and his ability are related to everything in the city. Therefore, I've chosen Jin Yifeng to replace him. He paused and said, this matter was approved by my master. I hope you can make the appropriate arrangements. Chapter 3879. They chatted for a while in the main hall before the great elder asked Duan Yunhe to send him off. As they walked out, Duan Yunhe asked, where are you going? I've been out for many years and know many places. If you need my help, just let me know. Qi Kong smiled and said, if we need your help, we won't stand on ceremony. Alright, I should go back now. You don't have to send me off. Goodbye. I'll probably go over tomorrow to help you deal with the handover of the East City Lord. See you tomorrow. Duan Yunhe said as he sent him to the sect gate. Qi Kong responded, then gathered his qi and rode on his sword, heading towards Spirit Immortal City. He still had to inform the first mercenary group so that Jimmy Feng could be prepared. When he arrived at the first mercenary group from the High Firmament Immortal sect, the sky was already dark. Just as he was about to ask the mercenaries to go in and inform them, he saw a mercenary carrying wine walk over. When the mercenary saw him, he was startled and quickly walked over. East City Lord? Are you looking for our leader? The mercenary asked. He was surprised. He didn't expect such a famous person to come to their mercenary group. Yes. Is your leader here? Qi Kong asked. Yes. The leader is inside. I'll bring you in. The mercenary said as he led the way. When the mercenaries in the mercenary group saw Qi Kong, they immediately rushed to inform their leader. A mercenary walked over to Jimmy Feng and said anxiously, "Leader, the East City Lord is here." Jimmy Feng was startled. He looked up and saw that the person walking behind the mercenary was Qi Kong. He immediately stood up and greeted him. "Why is the East City Lord here? Is there something you need?" He asked as he invited him in and sat down. Qi Kong nodded at him and sat down. When he saw that the mercenaries had left, he said, "I'm here today because I have something to tell you. Please sit." Jimmy Feng looked at him with a serious expression. Why did he come here so late at night? Furthermore, he came here personally. Was there something important? It's like this. We're preparing to leave, so we plan to let you take over the position of City Lord of the East District. Upon hearing this, Jimmy Feng was slightly surprised. You're leaving? Was he not planning to come back? You want to go too? Yes, wherever my master goes, we will follow. Qi Kong looked at him and said, "It would be best if you could take over the position of City Lord of the Eastern District." Jimmy Feng waved his hand and said, No. If I take over, the aristocratic families in the city will not accept it. After all, I am someone who lost the election. How can I be qualified to take over the position of City Lord of the East District? This is not acceptable. I've already gone to the Lingshao Celestial Sect. They will make the arrangements. With them and my master's instructions, no one in the city will dare to have any opinions about you. Qi Kong smiled and looked at him. We've known each other for some time. We know your character. We made the decision after careful consideration to let you take over the position of City Lord of the East District. We believe that you will not disappoint us. Chapter 3880. After sitting at Jimmy Feng's place for a while and chatting with him about the current situation in the East City Lord Mansion, Qi Kong got up and left. After sending Qi Kong off, Jimmy Feng stood there for a long time without moving, but he felt a little emotional. He had gotten to know them by a freak combination of factors. He did not expect that they would give up the position of the East City Lord just like that. After returning to the small house in the center of the lake, Qi Kong reported the matter to Fengjiu and returned to the East City Lord Mansion. At noon the next day, the people from the High Firmament Celestial Sect arrived. When the news of Jimmy Feng taking over the position of the East City Lord spread, the entire Spirit Immortal City was shocked. East City Lord Qi Kong had only taken over for a short period of time, so why did he give up so quickly? What was the reason? They guessed, but no one knew that they were going to leave. After all, they had only stayed here for a short period of time, and there were 2 children who were only a few months old in the mansion. No one would expect them to leave at this time. However, no one objected to Jimmy Feng taking over other than discussing it. The strength of Jin Yifeng, the leader of the number 1 mercenary group, was obvious to all. Moreover, this matter was personally announced by the High Firmament Celestial Sect and the current Eastern City Lord, Qi Kong, so no one would say anything. While the East City Lord Mansion was busy with the handover, in the small house in the center of the lake, Fengjiu and Xinyuan Mose were idle all day, playing with their children and enjoying the time together as a family. Especially as they watched their 2 children grow up day by day and become more beautiful day by day, their hearts were filled with boundless pride and satisfaction. After settling the matters in the Spirit Immortal City, they were not in a hurry to leave. Instead, they stayed for another half a month before preparing to leave. Early in the morning, before the sky was bright, a luxurious carriage quietly went out of the city gate. Just like when they came, they left quietly and did not disturb anyone. When the people in the Spirit Immortal City learned that the people in the small house in the center of the lake had left, another half a month had passed. Apart from the initial discussion, gradually as the days passed, the people in the city gradually forgot about them, as if they had never existed. On a mountain road, Fengjiu and the others, who had been walking leisurely for half a month, stopped and rested on the side of the road. The Million Buddhist sect was said to be in the westernmost place. Because their children were still young, they were not in a hurry to leave. Instead, they walked slowly as if they were on a scenic tour. Along the way, Fengjiu was cultivating. In half a month, she was about to break through the threshold and advance. One had to know that ever since her strength had regressed, she had been stagnant. Perhaps it was because her body and mind had relaxed during this period of time that her state of mind had changed. She had faintly touched the threshold. "Drink some water." Shen Mose handed her the water and said, "We have been away for a long time, so your diet is not as good as the one in the small house in the center of the lake. Why don't we find a place to rest for a few days and let you recuperate?" Hearing this, Fengjiu pursed her lips and smiled, saying, "I'm fine now. Qin Xen and the others made soup for me on the way." Chapter 3881. Fengjiu smiled and casually said, "I didn't have enough rest on the road and I'm also carrying 2 children. Naturally, I'll be a bit skinnier. Don't worry. My body is very good and I know that my body's nutrition can't keep up." Seeing her like this, Shen Mose paused for a moment and said, "How about you help the 2 children stop drinking milk? Just let them eat some porridge." Hearing this, Fengjiu burst out laughing. She glanced at him with a smile in her clear eyes and said, "It's only been 4 months. How can they stop? They'll be malnourished." As she said this, she reached out to hold his hand and smiled, all right. I'll drink more soup to nourish my body. How about this? I think this place is pretty good, so I won't be leaving today. Let's rest here first and let Qin Xen and the rest make some delicious food." Shen Mose looked around and saw that there was a grassland in front of them and a small river downhill. On the other side of the mountain road was a forest and there was no wind village in front or behind the road. He had no choice but to nod his head. "Then let's rest here." As soon as he finished speaking, Fengjiu smiled and said to Leng Shuang, "Go and tell them to rest here tonight and let them prepare. Let Qin Xen prepare some stewed soup." Shen Mose instructed. "Yes," Leng Shuang replied. She glanced at the 2 of them with a smile in her eyes. On the grassland, Hui Lang moved forward to look at the child in Du Fan's arms. Seeing that there was no cinnabar between her eyebrows, he said, "This isn't little Yu. I think it's better for me to hold little Yu." As he said this, he walked over to Luo Yu and stretched out his hand. Come, let me hold her and play with her." Hearing this, Luo Yu raised his eyebrows and looked at him. "Hui Lang, you're quite bold. You actually dare to play with little master?" Hui Lang knew that he had misspoken. He smiled awkwardly and said, "It means to tease her for fun." "That won't do. I just held him for a while. If you want to hold him, you should hold little Chen." Luo Yu turned sideways and avoided him, not letting him snatch the baby away. It's not like you don't know. Every time I hug that little ancestor, he pees all over me. Little Yu is still more obedient. I still want to hug little Yu." Hui Lang grinned and looked expectantly at the child in Luo Yu's arms, who was blinking and giggling at him. "Look, little Yu is smiling at me. He wants me to hug her too. Give it to me." Grey Wolf reached out his hand and looked at the tender little girl giggling at him. His heart almost melted when he saw the little girl's expression. Luo Yu deliberately teased him. He carried the child and dodged again. "Little Yu, you also want Uncle Hui Lang to hug you, right?" Hui Lang moved forward and made faces to tease her. When he saw her giggling even more cheerfully, he couldn't help but giggle foolishly. Look, she wants me to hug her." Seeing this, Luo Yu smiled and handed the child to him. "I'll give it to you. But don't make her cry." I know. Little Yu won't cry," Hui Lang happily said. He carefully took the child and softly said, "Little Yu quickly call me Uncle Hui Lang." Chapter 3882. Seeing that they were carrying the child, Fengjiu said to Shen Mose, "Let's go to the carriage. I'll help you massage the acupuncture points on your feet and move your muscles." Xian Yuan Mose responded and returned to the carriage with her. Outside, other than the two with the child, everyone else began to get busy. Some set up small tents, some picked up branches to start a fire, some went fishing and some went to the small forest to look for game. As the sky gradually darkened, smoke rose in spirals and the smell of food filled the air. At night, the child cried because of hunger. Fengjiu got up to feed him and Xian Yuan Mose also got up to carry the other child. In the darkness of the night, the sound of the child crying was very clear on the mountain path. Gradually, the surrounding wind seemed to become stronger, whistling like the howling of ghosts and wolves. The people who were originally sleeping felt the sudden change in the atmosphere, and quickly got up to guard the carriage. Torches lit up the surroundings, but it was pitch black. There was nothing but an unusually strong night wind. Whoosh! There's something wrong with this wind, Hui Lang said as he swung his arms and stared at the surroundings. It's a yin wind. Qi Kong stared at the darkness and said, it seems that this place is not very clean. Stay alert, don't let those dirty things startle the little masters. Du Fan said as he waved his hand and set up a barrier around the carriage. The children were different from them. It would be bad if they were accidentally startled. In the carriage, Fengjiu finished feeding one child and went to feed the other. She was not very worried about what was going on outside. After all, on this continent, there were very few people who could be Du Fan's opponents, whether it was cultivators or anything else. If anything happened, they could deal with it. Xian Yuan Mose looked at the child who was full, but blinked her eyes and stared at him. He couldn't help but smile. Look at our daughter, she's not sleeping even though she's full. She went to bed early today. She probably isn't sleepy anymore. Feng Jiu said with a smile. She looked at her daughter's bright eyes and her chubby cheeks. She was extremely adorable, just like a treasure. As the two people in the carriage were talking, Feng Jiu felt a murderous aura coming towards her. She frowned and hid the smile on her face. Before she could do anything, Xian Yuan Mose waved his hand and strengthened the enchantment around the carriage, isolating it from the outside aura and sound. Stay here with the child. I'll go out and take a look. As he spoke, he placed the child in his arms beside her and prepared to go outside to take a look. This was because the murderous aura he felt earlier was extraordinary, and it gave him a bad premonition. Fengjiu reached out to hold him back and said, let's wait for a moment. Let them try to deal with it first. Xian Yuan Mose paused, then said, with their strength, it won't be a problem for them to deal with strong cultivators. However, if it's against such a strong murderous aura, they're probably still lacking. His wife and child were here. If the murderous aura was too strong, it might hurt the child. Thus he felt more at ease going out to take a look. Seeing this, Fengjiu paused for a moment and let go of his hand, saying, then be careful. Xian Yuan Mose pursed his lips and smiled, and don't worry. With that, he got off the carriage first. Chapter 3883. They didn't see that after Qin Xian's body trembled at that moment, a trace of blood flashed across her eyes. In the howling baleful yin wind, she suddenly raised her hand to grab Leng Hua beside her. She didn't have a weapon in her hand, but when she raised her finger, a wave of baleful yin qi formed. Like a sharp object, she stabbed it at Leng Hua with a ruthless and murderous speed. Leng Hua only felt a gust of baleful yin wind accompanied by a murderous intent. He instinctively looked to his side and saw her ferocious face filled with murderous intent. Her figure suddenly rushed towards him. He raised his hand to block, but unexpectedly her strength was so great that he didn't notice it. His sleeve was torn by her fingers and blood seeped out, dyeing the crescent moon robe red. Be careful! The surrounding people shouted as they rushed forward. However, Qin Xian's speed was even faster, especially when she was only a step away from Leng Hua. Just as her next attack was about to land on Leng Hua's heart, a powerful pressure abruptly gushed out, and with a swoosh Qin Xian was sent flying. Bang! A shrill scream came out of Qin Xian's mouth, but it didn't sound like Qin Xian's usual voice. Hearing it, everyone felt their hair stand on end. Du Fan and the others looked back and saw Xian Yuan Mose, who was originally in the carriage, sitting outside. His body was still surging with baleful yin qi. Everyone couldn't help but call out to him. Yama Lord. Xian Yuan Mose flicked his sleeve and took out the wheelchair that he had put away in his space. He jumped into the air and sat on the wheelchair. His gaze swept past Du Fan and the others and fell on Qin Exin, who was lying on the ground and screaming. He said to them, "This is an extremely powerful baleful yin qi. Be careful not to be possessed by it." Hearing this, everyone's heart sank. They looked at Qin Exin with some worry. "Yama Lord, Qin Exin is. The baleful yin has possessed her. At this moment she is already being controlled," Xianyuan Mose said in a deep voice. He saw Leng Hua's face gradually turn pale, and he was on the verge of collapsing. Many quickly help Leng Hua expel the yin qi from his body. "Leng Shuang, protect them," Xianyuan Mose immediately said in a low voice as he said to them, "If you don't notice your injuries, if the baleful yin qi enters your body, it will become uncontrollable." Yes. Everyone responded at once. Many people quickly went up and brought Leng Hua to the back. Leng Hua looked worried as he came to their side and set up a barrier to protect them. But Qin Exin, who was lying on the ground, screamed. She jumped up and rushed towards them again. Du Fan and the others were afraid that they would kill Qin Exin if they attacked too fiercely, so they didn't dare to use their full strength. But in this way they were gradually put into a passive position. Here the baleful yin qi in the air became more and more powerful. One of the baleful yin qi rose from the ground and pierced through the air like a cold sword. Its momentum was so strong that it had already surpassed Qin Exin's strength. They quickly dodged. Thinking that their master and the two little masters were still in the carriage, they gritted their teeth and said, "No matter what. Let's capture her first." As soon as they finished speaking, several people surrounded her and attacked her fiercely. Under their siege, she was gradually at a disadvantage. Chapter 38-84. Just as Du Fan couldn't bear the sharp pain and retreated, Qin Exin attacked him. Seeing this, Qi Kong and the others quickly attacked, but they were surrounded by a strong wind. The wind and sand rolled up and they couldn't see what was in front of them. Xianyuan Mose, who was sitting in a wheelchair, had been watching quietly. When he saw that Qi Kong and the others were bound by the cold wind and Du Fan was in danger, he flicked his finger and a stream of air with a murderous aura attacked. Whoosh! Qin Exin's knee was hit and the pain seeped into her bones. It was so painful that she immediately knelt down. She turned her head abruptly and a bloody light flashed in her eyes. She gritted her teeth and roared like a wild beast. Then she pounced on Xianyuan Mose. She leapt into the air with her body half bent, and her outstretched hand drew a sharp gust of wind in the air. However, before her attack could even get close, her entire body was sent flying by Xianyuan Mose. Bang! Ah! Her body fell heavily to the ground and she spat out a mouthful of blood. She struggled to get up, but she felt a strong and suffocating aura coming at her. She held her head and screamed. She grabbed her hair with both hands and turned her head abruptly. Her blood-red eyes glared fiercely at Xianyuan Mose, and then she jumped into the small forest. Qin Exin! Everyone shouted and wanted to chase after her, but they heard Xianyuan Mose's voice. Wait! Xianyuan Mose looked at them and stopped them from following. He glanced at the small forest and then looked at Du Fan. "Gan, how are you? My divine sense is under attack." Du Fan's face was slightly pale. His condition was clearly not quite right. Xianyuan Mose narrowed his eyes and said in a low voice, "This dark specter is extremely powerful. Its strength is not on par with yours. Furthermore, the smell of blood on its body is extremely strong. I reckon that its hands are stained with the blood of many people. Its attack is very effective, especially when it damages the consciousness. If something goes wrong, the consequences will be very serious." He paused and looked at him, saying, "Go and rest for a while. Adjust your aura and heal yourself so that you won't be injured." Du Fan originally wanted to say that there was no need, but his body felt increasingly unwell. Moreover, once his spiritual sense was injured, it could be either light or heavy. In the end, he still replied, "Yes." "Yamalord, what about Qin Exin?" Fan Lin looked at him and asked worriedly, "Will she be okay? Will the Yin Fiend kill her?" Fengjiu lifted the curtain and got out of the carriage. Because of the enchantment and soundproof enchantment set up in the carriage, she did not know what was going on outside. However, when she came out and saw the situation, she knew that it was not good. Especially when she heard Fan Lin's words, she frowned. Since the Yin Fiend has possessed her body, it will not kill her easily. Right now she will be fine. However, after being possessed by the Yin fiend, her body will probably be very weak. Xinyuan Mose said. As soon as his voice fell, he seemed to sense something and turned to look at Fengjiu in the carriage. Why did you come out? I was worried, so I came out to take a look. What happened to Qin Xing? Fengjiu asked. She got out of the carriage and walked towards him. When she saw that Leng Hua and Du Fan were both sitting on the ground and adjusting their breathing, she could not help but frown. Chapter 3885. Hearing this, Fengjiu looked at him and nodded. Yes, no matter what, saving Qin Xing is the most important thing. Don't worry. Xinyuan Mose said and gestured for her to get into the carriage. After seeing her turn around and get into the carriage, he said to everyone, I just said that this inspector's cultivation is on par with yours. If you fight it head-on, you will be slightly weaker than it. In addition, it is attached to Qin Xion's body, so you will be merciful. If you fight it head-on, you will not be able to gain the upper hand. Hearing this, everyone was silent and did not say a word. That's right, because the inspector was attached to Qin Xion's body, they did not dare to kill it. Moreover, the inspector was fatal to them, so if they fought it head-on, they would be at a disadvantage. Master, according to your opinion, what should we do? Hui Lang asked. Since this thing has appeared here, then it must have a cave in the surroundings. Go and find where its cave is first, then come back and report. Remember, don't act rashly and alert it. If you encounter it, you must be 120% alert. If you are even the slightest bit careless, you will give the baleful Yin an opportunity to take advantage of. Hearing this, Hui Lang asked again, Master, how can we find the inspector's acupoint? Where the Yin Qi gathers, it must be a place where there is little sunlight. The aura of resentment should be very strong. If you search according to these points, it should be in this small forest. As long as we find the inspector's acupoint, even if it escaped very far, it will appear in front of us. Xinyuan Mose said and said to them, Qingqing, stay here. The rest of you go together. Be careful. Yes. The few of them replied and glanced at Leng Hua and Du Fan, who were sitting cross-legged and meditating. They said to Bai Qingqing, keep an eye on this place. Yes, I will. Bai Qingqing replied and stood guard beside the carriage. Sitting in the wheelchair, Xinyuan Mose looked at the night sky above the forest and his expression became more and more serious. Bai Qingqing saw him staring at the top of the forest and asked, Yama Lord, why is this evil spirit so powerful? Xinyuan Mose glanced at her, and then shifted his gaze to the night sky above the little forest. He said, that baleful Yin should have formed many years ago. It's so powerful because it feeds on the essence and blood of cultivators. His voice paused for a moment before he continued. Moreover, the murderous aura and resentment above the small forest are soaring to the sky. Even if they go in, they might not be able to find the meridian point of the murderous aura. Then what should we do? Will they be in danger? Bai Qingqing asked. Xinyuan Mose pondered for a moment. He glanced at them, then went to the side of the carriage and lifted the curtain to look at Fengjiu and the two children inside. The two children refused to sleep and Fengjiu was coaxing them. When she saw Xinyuan Mose lift the curtain and look in, she asked, What's wrong? I told Qi Kong and the others to go into the little forest to find the meridian point of the murderous aura. But when I looked up, I saw that the murderous aura and resentment in the sky above the little forest are alternating. I'm worried that they'll be in trouble if they go in. Hearing his words, Fengjiu smiled and said, Then go in. I'll take care of the children. They'll be fine. We'll wait here for you to come out. I'm worried. Chapter 3886. Fengjiu smiled and said, Don't worry, Leng Shuang and the others are still here. Don't worry. Xinyuan Mose was still hesitating. However, at this moment, a cry of surprise came from the small forest. From the sound of it, it seemed to be Hui Lang's voice. He frowned and looked towards the small forest, his thin lips slightly pursed. Quick, go and take a look. It's Hui Lang's voice. Something must have happened. Fengjiu urged him to go and take a look. With his cultivation at the peak of the Divine King stage, even if he could not stand up, his strength was not affected at all. If he went over, perhaps the matter would be resolved. Xinyuan Mose paused for a moment, then said, Take the child and stay in the carriage. Don't come down. I'll go and take a look. Fengjiu replied. He looked at him and said, Be careful. Xianyuan Mose looked at Ling Shuang, Bai Qingqing and Many. He said, be vigilant and protect them well. Many, you go with Mose. Ling Shuang and Qingqing will be here. Just Yi will be enough. Fengjiu gestured for him to go to Xianyuan Mose's side to take care of him. Many replied, yes. He immediately went to Xianyuan Mose's side. Xianyuan Mose wanted Many to stay, but before he could say anything, Fengjiu said, let Many go with you. I'm more at ease. Hearing this, he nodded and walked towards the small forest with many other people. Fengjiu watched them leave. He saw Xianyuan Mose sitting in his wheelchair and Many pushed him from behind. The two of them rose into the air and flew towards the small forest. When they could no longer be seen, Fengjiu looked up at the night sky above the small forest. I didn't feel it during the day, but after midnight the Yin energy is so strong, she said softly. She was a little surprised. She didn't expect that there would be such a strong Yin qi in a place like this. At this moment, Leng Hua withdrew his aura and slowly exhaled before opening his eyes. He looked at the wound on his hand and stood up. Master. Fengjiu lifted the curtain with one hand, looked at him and asked, how are you? Are you feeling better? I'm better, but I still feel a trace of cold Yin qi in my body, Leng Hua said. He clenched his fist and felt that his palm was also cold. Fengjiu looked at his expression and said, come closer. Leng Hua obeyed and came to the side of the carriage. He reached out his hand at her signal. Leng Shuang was a little worried as he watched from the side. Seeing his master take Leng Hua's pulse and withdraw his hand after a while, he asked, Master, how is he? Fengjiu's expression hardened slightly. This Yin qi is much stronger than I thought. The Yin qi in your body hasn't been completely removed. As she spoke, she glanced at the two children waving their little hands on the soft couch. She called out Tun Yun and accompanied them to play in the carriage. She then walked out of the carriage. She grabbed Leng Hua's injured hand and examined the wound. Then she circulated the spiritual energy in her body. She gathered spiritual energy in her other hand and pushed it up through her palm. Leng Hua only felt a wave of spiritual energy carrying the heat of the phoenix's flames move through his veins. As it flowed, he felt a wave of warmth surge through his body, dispersing the wave of cold Yin qi in his body. Fengjiu circulated her qi to help force out the remaining Yin qi in his body. Only when she saw threads of cold air emerge from his forehead did she withdraw her hand, saying, Leng Shuang, help him bandage his wound. Chapter 3887. The chilly wind swept over like a sea current, causing the surrounding weeds on the ground to bend. In the small forest on the other side of the mountain path, the leaves rustled as if someone was crazily shaking the branches. Be careful. Fengjiu warned them to be careful. At the same time, she quickly returned to the horse carriage and sent the two children and Tun Yun into the space. After sending the two children into the space, she finally felt relieved. She had never been afraid of danger. However, after having two children, she was worried that they would be hurt because they were defenseless. Now that she had sent them into the space, she felt a little more at ease. In her opinion, there was nowhere safer than in her space. She didn't have to worry about them getting hurt in the space. Moreover, there were a few little beasts accompanying them in the space. This way she could face any danger with ease. She didn't attack them directly. Instead, she set up a barrier and asked them to stay inside. The chilly wind rolled up from the ground. When it approached the horse carriage, it was blocked by the barrier. At this moment, a black shadow gradually took shape in the night sky. It was like a shadow. She couldn't see its face clearly. She only knew that it had a pair of blood-red eyes. The murderous aura and resentment that emanated from its body were extremely strong. The two auras were attacking the barrier as if trying to break it open. Fengjiu stared at the shadow in front of them and then looked towards the woods. She was surprised. This isn't the one from before. Leng Shuang and Bai Qingqing heard this and looked at each other. The one from before possessed Qin Xian's body. It seemed to be a woman. The murderous aura wasn't as strong as this one. This one seems to be a man. It's even more powerful than the one from before. Then it should be a pair. Fengjiu said thoughtfully. Master, what should we do now? Bai Qingqing asked. Wait. Fengjiu said, wait until they find the acupoints of these two Yin spirits. As long as they clean up the area, we don't need to do anything. They will disappear naturally. But Dachi paused and looked at Leng Shuang and Bai Qingqing. She said, "Women belong to the Yin, so it's easier for them to be possessed. You two have to be careful. Stay alert." Hearing this, the two of them became alert and nodded solemnly. "Yes, we will." "Master, how long can this barrier last?" Leng Hua watched as the Yin specter continued to attack the barrier. He was worried that the barrier wouldn't be able to withstand its repeated attacks. "That's hard to say. We'll have to see how powerful it is." As Fengjiu spoke, he stood by the side of the carriage and did not move. He only looked at the Yin specter and no one knew what he was thinking. Leng Hua pondered for a moment before voicing the questions in his heart. "Master, if it were any other time, this kind of evil spirit wouldn't dare to approach us. Why would it dare to attack us like this? Moreover, it's obvious that it's luring the tiger away from the mountain. It seems like it's coming for us." Hearing his words, Fengjiu's eyes flashed. "It's coming for us. No, it's coming for the two children." At this point, Fengjiu's expression turned cold and a murderous look flashed across his clear eyes. This Yin specter was targeting his children. Chapter 3888. Innate spiritual bodies and babies less than a year old. In the eyes of the Yin specter, these two children are great nourishment. Fengjiu said coldly. She stared at the Yin specter that was hitting the barrier, and a fierce murderous intent flashed across her eyes. Leng Hua and the others' expressions froze. To be able to sense the existence of the two children and be so strong, these two Yin specters were really not ordinary. Whoosh! Bang! A powerful air current whistled and hit the barrier. When the two air currents collided, a loud bang was heard. The air current swayed with a whoosh and the Yin specter hit the barrier again, ferociously trying to pounce into the barrier. Fengjiu looked on coldly. She did not intend to make a move, but when she thought that the Yin specter was targeting her children, a murderous intent surged in her heart. She stretched out her hand and with a flash of light, the Qingfeng sword that she rarely used appeared in her hand. "All of you stay in the barrier and don't go out. I'll deal with this thing," she said slowly. Just as she was about to go out, she saw Leng Hua stop her. "Master, your strength has not recovered yet. The Yama Lord said that the Yin specter's strength was on par with ours. This one is even stronger. If you go up against it, it's just a Yin specter. What's there to be afraid of?" Fengjiu said. She raised her hand and wiped the Qingfeng sword in her hand, saying, "My current strength is more than enough to deal with it." But Leng Hua wanted to say more, but he saw that she had already gathered her energy and was heading out. He could not stop her even if he wanted to. "Let's wait and see first. If it doesn't work, we can go out and help," Leng Hua said. Looking at his master outside, his spiritual aura surged. With a flip of his hand, a flame attacked. When the Yin specter saw the scorching flame coming, it roared and quickly retreated. Then it went around to the side and pounced. From the black shadow, a pair of ghost claws seemed to reach out and attack Fengjiu's heart. Seeing this scene, Leng Hua and the others felt their hearts skip a beat. Their breaths were stuck in their throats until they saw their master slashing his sword at the pair of ghost claws. Only then did they finally calm down. The bell at her waist rang, but it was covered by the sound of the air current and the whistling cold wind. A bone-piercing Yin specter filled the surroundings, forming the appearance of a ferocious beast that pounced at her with its mouth wide open. Feng Jiu immediately turned her palm, and a spiritual force shot out from her palm. With a whoosh, a crimson flame burst out from the long sword in her hand. The flame soared and the airflow whistled. Instead of retreating, she advanced. Holding the flaming Qingfeng sword in one hand, she went up to meet the attack. With a leap, she leaped into the air, and the long sword in her hand, which contained the power to split heaven and earth, slashed down from above. "How dare you have ideas than us? I will definitely destroy your soul and make you unable to reincarnate. Die for me." Her cold voice contained a frightening murderous aura. Accompanied by her clear shout, a sharp sword that shot out flames also slashed down from above. With an irresistible force, it viciously slashed towards the Yin specters below. A terrifying aura that contained an ancient might surged towards the baleful Yin spirit, causing it to retreat in shock. However, when it raised its head to look, it saw that the flaming sword above its head had practically blocked its path of retreat, causing it to have nowhere to run. "No. A hoarse roar came from the inspector's mouth. It was like a howl, shrill and panicked. The sound soared into the sky and spread in the night. It was extremely clear. Chapter 3889. Although he couldn't see through the forest, he knew that something had happened. Master, something seems to have happened to Madame. Hui Lang walked to Xianyuan Mo's side and looked worriedly in the direction of the small forest. When he found the location of the Yin Fiend's acupuncture point, he was bewitched. It was as if he had walked into a hell filled with Yin Fiends and demons. He couldn't find a way out and was even attacked by some Yin Fiends. Fortunately, his master rushed over and dragged him out of the place of extreme Yin. Qi Kong and the others also stopped what they were doing and turned around to take a look. They were all somewhat worried. Hurry up. Dig out what's underground. Xianyuan Mo said in a deep voice. When they heard this, all of them hurriedly restrained their minds and continued digging. Wei Feng and the others stood within the hole they'd come out from and dug out the soil within it. The further they dug, the more they felt a strand of Yin Qi shoot up from beneath their feet. At this moment, when they dug out a white bone, the Yin Fiend, who was recuperating in the depths of the small forest, suddenly trembled and jumped up. She opened her arms and roared. In the next moment she rushed into the forest as if she had gone mad. At this moment Qin Xin was possessed. Her hair was messy and her body was covered in soil. Her eyes were bloodshot and her face was full of killing intent. Her figure flitted through the forest and in the night, a gust of Yin Qi was swept up. When Xianyuan Mo, who was sitting in a wheelchair, sensed the Yin Qi coming from afar, a dark light flashed through his sharp black eyes and he looked in a certain direction in the forest. If there was still Yin Fiend there, then what kind of Yin Fiend was fighting with Fengjiu and the others? Dig! He shouted in a deep voice and looked at the people in the hole. Bones were dug out by them one after another. Looking at the bones, Qi Kong said, "Yama Lord, there isn't one set of bones here. There should be 2 sets. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mo said, "Find their skulls and destroy them." What made Qi Kong and the others feel strange was that they had found the bones, but they couldn't find the skull. They could only dig as they searched. Since the bones were here, the skull should also be here. Perhaps it was just hidden deeper. However, before they could dig out the skull, they saw Qin Xin rush out of the tree and pounce at them with a roar. "Qin Xin!" They instinctively called out, but when they came back to their senses and were about to block her, she was already sent flying. "Keep digging," Xianyuan Mo said in a deep voice. His hands formed a seal in front of him. The seal was as clear as a meat bun, and along with a surge of spiritual aura, it surged out and enveloped Heart of the Zither, who was pouncing forward. Ah! The imprint was formed by spiritual power and it pressed down on Qin Xin, pressing her against a tree not far away. The ancient aura on the imprint was like shackles that bound the Yin Fiend, tightly binding her hands and feet, making her unable to break free. "Found it!" Wei Feng shouted in surprise and dug out a skull from the soil. "There's one here too," many people said and dug out another skull. "Destroy it," Xianyuan Mo said in a deep voice. Chapter 3890. The 2 of them were startled and could not help but try again. However, they only saw fresh blood seeping out of the skulls and the Yin specter attached to Qin Xion's body shrieked miserably. "Bring it over," Xianyuan Mo said in a low voice, his deep gaze landing on the 2 skulls. At the same time, the Yin specter that was fighting with Fengjiu had already suffered a blow from Fengjiu and its strength had been greatly reduced. It was forced to retreat in defeat. In addition to the heart-wrenching pain that came from its soul, it was unable to continue fighting. It shrieked and wanted to rush back into the small forest. However, how could Fengjiu let it escape at this time? Seeing the shadow escape into the small forest, she immediately threw the emerald edge sword in her hand into the air. A flame surged on the blade with a whoosh. Following her clear cry, the emerald edge sword, which contained her life's flame, suddenly attacked the shadow with a whoosh. Whoosh! Whoosh! The fierce sound of air surged and the sound of flames whistled. Just as the shadow was about to escape into the small forest, the emerald edge sword pierced through it from behind. But as the Yin specter shrieked miserably, the flames soared into the sky with a whoosh. The shadow was surrounded and roasted by the flames. Meanwhile, in the small forest on the other side, 2 loud sounds rang out. Bang bang! Ah! The moment the loud sounds rang out, the other inspector's shriek also rang out. In the small forest, the two skulls turned into ashes in front of Xianyuan Mo's. In the end they were blown away by the wind and not a single speck was left behind. Qin Exing. Fan Lin hurriedly rushed forward and caught Qin Exin who had fallen from the tree. Seeing that she was unconscious, he quickly checked her pulse and fed her a pill. Let's go back, Xianyuan Mo said and used his qi to make the wheelchair fly up. He turned around and led the way back. Fengjie waved her hand and removed the barrier. Xianyuan Mo's was the first to return. The wheelchair flew down and stopped in front of her. How are you? Are you all right? Xianyuan Mo's asked and looked at the carriage. Don't worry, it's all right. I've sent the child into the space. Fengjie said with a smile. She looked back and saw that Hui Lang was limping and Qin Exin was unconscious. She said, let me take a look at Qin Exin. Yeah. Hearing that the child was in the interspace, Xianyuan Mo's relaxed. Master, Qin Exion's condition, Fan said and quickly put Qin Exin. As soon as Fengjie reached out and touched her pulse, she felt a cold air coming from her fingertips. She took back her hand and turned her palm. She used the life flame in her body to force the yin qi out of her body with the help of her spiritual power. Fan Lin supported her and saw that there was a trace of cold air coming out of her head. Her originally cold body gradually warmed up and his heart finally relaxed. After seeing his master withdraw his hand, he couldn't help but ask worriedly, Master, she has been possessed for so long, will her body not be able to recover? She will be weaker these days. You pay more attention and take good care of her. In addition, she also has some internal injuries. You help her recuperate, Fengjie said and then said to Bai Qingqing and Leng Shuang, you two take her into the carriage and help her change her clothes and clean her up. The two answered and stepped forward to help the unconscious Qin Exian up. Chapter 3891. Hui Lang, how are you? Fengjie asked, her gaze falling on Hui Lang. Don't worry, madam. I'm fine. It's just some minor injuries. Hui Lang grinned, limping to the side and sitting down. Seeing many people come forward to help him apply medicine, Fengjie did not step forward. She came to Xianyuan Mo's side and sat down. For a moment she did not speak, only looking ahead and thinking. The two sat in silence for a long time. Xianyuan Mo's looked at her and saw her brows slightly furrowed with worry in her eyes. He asked, are you still worried? Yes, I didn't expect something like this to happen tonight. Fengjie sighed softly in her heart. She did not expect that the Yin fiends would detect the innate spiritual bodies of the two children. Generally speaking, to detect spiritual bodies, one must test their spiritual energy. However, the spiritual energy of the two children was too pure and could not be concealed. In addition, the cultivation of these two Yin fiends was extremely high, so they were targeted. His voice paused and then he said, don't worry. It's not often that we encounter Yin fiends with such high cultivation. I hope so, Fengjie said softly, her heart gradually relieved. So what if there was danger? With them by the children's side, they could naturally protect them and let them grow up safely. Because Qin Exin and Du Fan were injured, they were not in a hurry to continue their journey. Especially after the threat here was removed, they first rested here, preparing to rest for a day before moving. Qin Exin woke up early the next morning. Because of the medicinal pills that helped her heal, her internal injuries gradually recovered. However, her pale face could not hide the weakness of her body. Fortunately, Fan Lin took care of her and helped her recuperate. After a few days they arrived at a town. Looking at the lively town in front of them, everyone's faces overflowed with smiles. Yama Lord Master, there's a town in front of us. It seems that we can have a good rest tonight. Luo Yu said happily, even his steps becoming lighter. Then let's rest here for a day or two, Fengjie said with a smile, lifting the curtain with one hand and looking outside. As the carriage entered the town, a few men stood at the entrance of the town and looked at the beautiful woman who lifted the curtain and peered outside. They couldn't help but stare blankly. It wasn't until their carriage entered the town that they regained their senses. Hiss! Was that a fairy? It's so beautiful, a man said as he looked at the carriage that was gradually disappearing into the distance. Not only is the red-clothed woman in the carriage breathtakingly beautiful, Even the few women sitting and following outside are rare beauties. The other side recovered from their shock, and their eyes were filled with amazement. One of the older men sighed softly and said, "Stop looking, come back to your senses. Didn't you see the men beside the carriage? Each and every one of them has an outstanding temperament. It can be seen that they aren't ordinary people. Moreover, that carriage is also low-key and luxurious. I reckon that they must be from some big family. Such a beautiful woman, any man who sees her would take a few more glances. We are stunned by her. This is human nature. After all, everyone has a love for beauty. Don't you think so?" "Ah," the man said, patting the shoulder of the person next to him and laughing loudly. Yes, that's right." The other two nodded in agreement, their faces full of smiles. Chapter 3892. The few of them put their arms around each other's shoulders as they walked towards the town, thinking that they might even be able to stay in the same inn as those delightful people. Thinking of this, the smiles on their faces deepened and their footsteps became lighter. Fengjiu's carriage stopped in front of a high-end inn. Leng Hua jumped off the carriage first and said, "Master Yamalord, please wait a moment. I'll go and ask if there are any rooms available." Fengjiu, who was in the carriage, responded and continued to play with the two children. Looking at little Yuer, who was in Xianyuan Mo's arms, drooling as she smiled, she couldn't help but chuckle. "Look at this child, she's drooling again. She's staining the front of your clothes." Xianyuan Mo dotingly used a soft handkerchief to gently wipe off his daughter's saliva and said, "It's okay, it'll dry in a while." Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes were full of smiles. Thinking of the past, his body couldn't be stained with the slightest bit of dirt, but now his daughter's saliva was okay. Looking at him carefully holding little Yuer in his arms with a gentle and doting expression, she couldn't help but feel a little jealous and said, "Mose, now that you have a daughter, you don't want me anymore, right?" Xianyuan Mose was startled and looked at her with some puzzlement. "How can that be? How can it not be? You say it yourself, whenever you have the chance you carry your daughter. It's fine if I don't care, but you also don't care about your son. Do you only have your daughter in your eyes?" Fengjiu said sourly, feeling that he was being unreasonable. However, she could also see that between his son and his daughter, he doted on his daughter more. As for her, in these past few months, the two of them hadn't been intimate even once. This made her sometimes wonder, could it be that after giving birth to a child her attractiveness wasn't that great? It was said that women aged quickly, especially after giving birth to a child. Could it be that she was already showing signs of age? Or were there wrinkles at the corners of her eyes? She couldn't care less about her jealousy. While holding her son, she took out a mirror from her space and looked at herself in the mirror. She murmured, "My complexion isn't very good recently, right? Do I look tired?" Xianyuan Mose didn't know what she was thinking. He only knew that she was talking to herself, so he said, "You're just a little thinner than before. It's normal that your complexion isn't as good as before. After all, you've been walking all this time." Before he could finish his words, he heard her exclaim softly, giving him a fright. "You really don't look well? Was he haggard? His skin was dull? Or are there wrinkles?" She frowned as she touched her face. Xianyuan Mose looked at her blankly and said, "No, you don't have any wrinkles. You're still as beautiful as ever." He felt a little strange in his heart. Why did she suddenly say such strange things? She should know that even if she was older, he would still only have her in his heart. He couldn't guess what women were thinking, especially someone like him who had zero emotional intelligence. He couldn't understand what women were thinking sometimes. Fengjiu glanced at him and said, "Chinner and you are both your children. You must treat them equally and not be biased. Otherwise, when they grow up and become more sensible, they will naturally notice the difference in your treatment." You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.